Bust it, Exhausting every chance, these victims of circumstance dance in a circle of confusion with cold muses who grab the soul with a tight grip, then uses up all your power while the weak man he loses. And it's deep how whenever man speak now he refuses to remember the abuses and all the people he misuses. And ain't no excuses, cause in every situation man chooses his own plate, his own fate, his own date at redemption. And only fools and babies get exemption, cause in the hereafter school, see we all stay for detention. And did I mention it's either ascension or dissension, no third dimension, so pay attention. Bust it,
I looked over at Gideon, who was in the driver's seat of the black Tahoe SUV. We had just left from visiting my father. It had been a whole year since we had last been in Chicago. I reached over and I rubbed the back of his neck underneath his braids. Y'all, I love this man so much. He stopped at a red light and leaned over and kissed me. Ew! Our 6-year-old son said from his booster seat in the back. Ew! Our 4-year-old daughter copied. I turned around and stuck my tongue out at them. Wolf, who was supposed to be way in the back, was instead sitting on the seat between the two knuckleheads with his big head in Yosef, who was our 6-year-old son's lap. Mijo, what you mean, ooh? Gideon said to him, looking at him through the rearview mirror. That's my mama you kissing, Yosef replied with his grossed out look on his face. Yeah, but that's my wife, Gideon told him. I shook my head. Gideon and his sons. Speaking of his sons, I was so looking forward to seeing my boy. I haven't seen Monroe, who turned 22 this year, since he was last at the Army, which was about 6 or 7 months ago. See, when he was 18, he decided to stay in Chicago permanently. Although he did come back to the Army to visit often, still, it wasn't the same as having him there with us all the time. My thoughts got kind of heavy, because the truth was, our trip back here was kind of bittersweet. Lion had told Gideon that if something wasn't done about Monroe, he was going to end up laying hands on him, for real. Y'all, everything is a mess. A few months ago, when Anataya turned 18, apparently Monroe asked her to marry him, and she said no. The word is, he took it hard, went out and got drunk, and then came back with Anataya's name tattooed on his neck. Nuria said that when Anataya saw it, she shook her head and pretty much called him a fool. They said that ever since then, he's become obsessed with her. She had had her mind set on marrying Benaiah. I don't know all the details, but somehow Monroe threatened the boy, and he must have been real convincing because now Benaiah won't marry Anataya. Nuria said that Benaiah barely even spoke to Anataya in fear of Monroe, who had embraced his crazy. Nuria's words, of course. She said sometime he freaked them out with his eyes. You see, the older my boy got, the more freaky his eyes and hair combination looked. I ain't gonna lie. Gideon tried to get him to wear contacts, but he said they irritated his eyes. So he owned more pairs of shades than anybody I knew. And when he wore them, everything was fine. When he didn't, he made people a little uneasy. That combined with the fact that he decided he was going to have Anataya no matter what. That has really put a strain on the Chicago family. The only reason Lion haven't just banned him from the gym completely is because Monroe and Daweed are really close, like blood brothers. Earlier this year, Daweed moved in our place, so with Monroe, and thank Yah for Nuria, who made sure that they kept it cleaned and fixed the walls that they managed to put holes in from fighting and whatnot. Yes, although they were best friends, they still fought like cats and dogs. Shoo, the same could be said about Lion and Gideon. It never failed. When it came time to go to Chicago, Gideon couldn't wait to link up with Lion, only to moments later be in some form of an argument. The last time we was here, you won't believe what they argued about the whole 3 months. Whether or not bleach was more sufficient than ammonia. I shook my head. I could only imagine what they would get into this time. I looked out the window as we drove to the Lion's Den. Chicago was changing. Heck, the world was changing. These demons that the ox fought were so busy. I wish I could just open everybody's eyes so they could see the ones behind all this mayhem. I wish I could just shake folks and yell at them and tell them that all of mankind was being manipulated by these beings that hated us, turning us from He who loves us. Every day Nuria is calling me or texting me about some mother who has lost her child to the sudden spike in violence sweeping across Chicago. Sudden spike indeed. If only the people knew what was really going on. Gideon said that this all was happening because the powers that be wanted to stop the Exodus. He said that the same powers that was there in Egypt when Egypt fell after the children of Israel left is the same ones that have invested in this place, and they do not want to see it fall. You see, most people think that the reason the world is the way it is, with the famine and disease and even the weather events that were wreaking havoc, was due to some great conspiracy of the wealthy to try and depopulate the earth. Gideon said that that wasn't true. He said the powers that be were more terrified of what is happening to the earth than us common folk were. It's just like what Yah said in Isaiah 8 and 12. He said, "Do not say a conspiracy concerning all that these people call conspiracy, nor be afraid of their threats, nor be troubled. Yah of hosts, Him you shall set apart. Let Him be your fear, and let Him be your dread." That's one of my favorite scriptures. Seeing what I see, I know those words to be true. At this point, anybody that does not fear Yah is a fool. Gideon say that those on the top fear most of all, just like they did in the beginning, because they know the truth. You see, they know that the birth pains have begun, and the end of this journey will be their demise and the birth of a nation, Zion. I asked my husband once why he thought the enemy tried to attack us so. He said because of Revelation 12. He and I often spoke of the duality we saw in the scriptures. He said Revelation 12 was in fact one, in his opinion. He said that when the Messiah is born in us, this enrages the dragon, who is then kicked out of us. And because of this, he makes war on us, because he knows that his time is in fact very short. You see, when the children of Israel wake up as a whole and fill themselves with Mashiach, they are going to take off the chains of sin. And then when the Father Yah calls us, we will then hear His voice, and we will exit out of this bondage. Hallelujah. But as I look around at my people, I can see all the effort, the work, the money that has gone into keeping our minds under bondage, filled with this dragon. My people, please, if you hear my voice, listen. In Yehoshua, you will find freedom. Claim your freedom, because only Yah can grant you peace. We were laughing at the kids when we pulled up to the gym. However, as soon as we stepped out the truck, we could hear voices raised in anger. My heart dropped. Something was wrong here. Something bad was happening. Gideon quickly lifted our daughter out of the car seat and into his arms. Then he made his way into the gym. I followed, holding Yosef's hand. The raised voices was that of Monroe and Dawid. Quickly we made our way through the gym and around the ring. Monroe and Dawid stood in each other's face, yelling at the other. Lion stood off to the side, his face distorted in rage. Nuria had her arm wrapped around Anataya, who was crying. Her shirt had been ripped. She was holding it up at her shoulder. "What the hell is going on here?" Gideon yelled over them. Monroe and Dawid both turned to look at Gideon. "He hurt my sister. He a drunk fool, and I'm getting ready to put him out of his misery," Dawid spat. I put my hand over my mouth. Dawid and Monroe fought all the time, but I had never seen them look at each other like this. I had never seen them like this. Monroe stared at Dawid as if he wanted to kill him. The muscle tickled fiercely in his jaw as he bit down on his teeth. "Call me a drunk fool again. Call me a drunk fool one more time and I'm going to put a piece of hot metal in your head." Dawid turned to look at him, his own face distorted in rage. He looked so much like his father, it was scary. He stood as tall and he was almost as wide as him. "You drunk fool," he said slowly. Monroe reached for one of the white-handled chrome pistols he wore like second skin. But right then, Gideon set down the baby and him and Lion moved at the same time. Gideon grabbing Monroe and Lion grabbing Dawid, who had a blade in his hand and was going towards Monroe's neck. I blinked. When had he grabbed a blade? Where in the world had the blade come from? Hey! Gideon shook Monroe, who snatched out of his arms. You see, Monroe wasn't a boy anymore. He too was as tall as his father and as wide. He was not easy to handle anymore. He backed up from us. "Don't touch me," he spat through his clenched teeth. Dear Yah, he looked wild and crazed. Through eyes that were almost completely white, he glared at us, so full of rage. What was wrong with him? He looked at Anataya. "Why won't you love me?" "Monroe, please," she cried, wiping tears from her big, beautiful eyes that slanted just like her mother's. "What?" he yelled at her. Dawid went for him, but Lion held him back. Gideon stood with his arms on the side of Monroe, ready to grab him if he needed. "My face? Is that what you told me? I'm too pretty for you," he hissed. He pulled a blade from his pocket, and before Gideon could get to him, he cut a gash down his face, right underneath his eyes, straight down his cheek. "What about now? Am I good enough for you now?" He spoke, still clenching his teeth together as blood began to ooze from the gash in his face. Anataya cried out and took a step toward him. "Don't you dare!" Dawid said to her. She jumped when she heard her brother's voice. Her focus had been completely on Monroe, who stood bleeding down his face and neck, the blood falling over her name that was, in fact, tattooed on his neck. As a matter of fact, the tattoo said, "Anataya, my songbird," and it was written in a beautiful script. I shook my head. He knows better than that. What was wrong with him? Anataya put her face in her hands as she cried her heart out. Her weeping was breaking my heart, and not just mine, because for just a moment Monroe's anger slipped, and he had a look of pure pain on his face as he listened to her. "Kiss this crazy nigga goodbye, little sister, because if he ever put his hands on you again, I will kill him, and that's my word." Monroe's white gaze went back to Dawid. He wasn't there. I could see it in his eyes. My boy wasn't there. Crazy? Crazy? You don't see what I see. Nigga, I laugh to keep from screaming. Who are you to judge me? Who are any of y'all to judge me? He snatched his arm away from Gideon, who was now just trying to just hold him. I know Gideon was afraid because we had never seen Monroe like this. But with all the stuff that he held in, we knew that this day was coming. Son, please, just talk to me. We can go around the corner to the house. We can just talk. No, Dad. No. You don't think I remember? I remember how you looked at me when you came and picked me up from my grandmother's. I remember. You looked at me as if I was a freak, as if something was wrong with me. The same way my mother looked before she left me. I never felt like I had nobody. He turned to look back at Anataya. Until I met you. You are mine. Mine! He hit his chest. And I will never let you go. He laughed, but there was no humor. He looked at Dawid. Hey, bruh. You gonna have to kill me, cause I ain't gonna never stop. She the only one that gives me peace. And if I can't have her, then no one can. He turned and walked towards the door. He stopped and looked back at his dad. Before he looked to the ground, he looked back up again and then put his hand over his heart. He patted his chest twice. Then he turned to look at Dawid, I think. But it was hard to tell because Anataya stood right next to him. Monroe held his hand up in the shape of a gun and he shot it. He shot at one of them. And then he was gone. Anataya's eyes widened. She had a look of utter terror on her face before she erupted in tears again. Something wasn't right with her. Something wasn't right about those tears. They sounded like guilty tears. Dawid's nostrils flared as he watched Monroe go. He stood there and fought a battle within himself. The rage that shot through him was so intense, we all felt it. I don't know what happened, but Dawid was normally the one that kept a level head between the two of them. Something bad had to happen for him to be in a full rage like this. He looked back at Anataya, who was still clutching her ripped shirt up on her shoulder. She was crying so hard. Then he looked at his father. When he made the decision to kill his brother, a look of deadly resolve came over his face before he snatched his blade and ran out the door behind Monroe. For a moment, everybody was just frozen in shock. Lion and Gideon, they snapped out of it first because they moved as one unit towards the door. But right when they got to it, the preacher stepped through, bringing them to a stop. Let them go. This has to happen. He looked at Nuria. Remember when I told you you would have to be brave? Her hand went to her mouth and she began to weep. No, preacher. Please, no, she cried. I'm not ready. He shook his head sadly. Unfortunately, Bot, your readiness is not a requirement. He looked at Lion and Gideon. You have trained them well. Now y'all must do the rest. Believe, Aki. And then he turned and was gone. And that would be the last time we saw him, Monroe, or Dawid for a long, long time. Hey, Shalom family, and thank you for traveling with me through Gideon's and Safiya's journey to love. However, it is time for us to say goodbye to them for now. and begin Daweed's journey to love. When next we see him, 12 years have passed and he's gone through hell and back, the journey making him a hard, cold man. He's nothing like the lovable kid we remember from the first 3 stories. He's cold and deadly and feared everywhere he goes. However, he runs into his match when he encounters code name Black Beauty. Pull up a chair, family. Their journey of discovery will prove to be quite interesting indeed. So without further ado, may I present you with Black Beauty, a Hebrew love story.